everyone! In this video, we'll be analysing Thomas Hardy's poem, Neutral Tones. First, let's find out a bit about who Thomas Hardy is. Thomas Hardy was born in 1840 and died in 1928 at the age of 87, both in Dorset, his home county. He was well versed in Latin from a young age and had trained as an architect before enrolling at King's College London after moving to the city in 1862. He married his first wife, Emma Gifford, in 1870, but they were later estranged. Despite that, Hardy remained emotionally attached to Gifford for the rest of his life. Distraught by her death in 1912, he wrote the volume Poems 1912-13 to cope with his grief and remorse over their failed marriage. Now, Hardy started off his literary career as a novelist, but some of his most celebrated novels today were critically panned in his own time, largely because of their open engagement with traditionally sensitive topics such as sex and marriage. After Jude the Obscure was published to almost universally negative reviews in 1895, Hardy stopped writing novels altogether and focused on poetry for the rest of his life. In terms of religion, Hardy had a complicated relationship with God and was largely agnostic, even though he did believe in a certain immanent will which works like the idea of an indifferent fate. He struggled with the belief in a benevolent God and was thoroughly disillusioned about the goodness of God and man after witnessing the horrors of World War I. Hardy was also well known for being openly critical of Victorian values and social class, and this may partly explain why he never really felt at home in cosmopolitan London, and returned to rural Dorset after spending only 5 years in the city. But for all the controversies Hardy had generated in his lifetime, he also received due credit for his contributions to literature, and was twice nominated for the Nobel Prize in Literature, first in 1910, later in 1921. Today, Hardy is viewed as one of the undisputed greats in the English literary pantheon. Now, I will read the poem aloud once, but if you want to do that yourself, which I recommend that you do, you can click pause and return to the video once you're done. We stood by a pond that winter day, and the sun was white, as though chidden of God, and a few leaves lay on the starving sod. They had fallen from an ash, and were grey. Your eyes on me were as eyes that rove over tedious riddles of years ago, and some words played between us to and fro on which lost the more by our love. The smile on your mouth was the deadest thing alive enough to have strength to die, and a grin of bitterness swept thereby like an ominous bird a wing. Since then, keen lessons that love deceives and rings with wrong have shaped to me your face, and the God-cursed sun, and a tree, and a pond edged with greyish leaves. The first thing to note about the poem is its title, Neutral Tones. As a melancholic lyric about the loss of affection with the passage of time, it seems a little strange that the title should allude to a neutral palette, as opposed to a colder hue which most people would associate with sadness. But to feel neutral about something is to not feel much of anything at all. And in the context of love, this means apathy, which ironically hurts more than negative emotions like hatred or bitterness. The absence of colour signals a lack of feeling, and in turn conveys the fading away of love. The only tones Hardy alludes to in the poem are white and grey. The sun was white, greyish leaves, etc. Now, both of these colours create a muted, monochromatic scheme that establishes the speaker's mood, and reminds one of a barren environment wherein no life, growth, or love can be found. One of the most remarkable things about this poem is Hardy's ability to approximate rawness of sentiment within a tightly controlled form. Despite the seeming regularity of a four-quatrain structure, the poem, when read aloud, flows in this natural, elegiac manner. And the naturalness is achieved through the spontaneous interplay of iambs and anapaests, subtle variation in metre, as well as a diversity in rhyme. At first reading, what's most apparent is probably the presence of the first three envelope stanzas, as we can see in the use of the ABBA CDDC EFFE enclosed rhyme scheme, followed by the identical end rhymes in the final stanza. But upon closer inspection, we see that there are actually also I rhymes and internal rhymes lurking within, which reduces the sort of stiltedness one would usually feel from reading a rhyme-heavy poem. Let's spend a couple of moments on the use of I rhyme and internal rhymes in this poem. Now, the only example of I rhyme in this poem is rove and love, which respectively appear in lines 5 and 8, as in the lines, "Your eyes on me were as eyes that rove," and "on which lost the more by our love." It's perhaps no coincidence that one half of the I rhyme, the word rove, comes at the end of a line that describes the eyes of the speaker's ex-lover. Specifically, the meaning of rove, which is to travel aimlessly, implies the casual disinterest in the way she looks at him after their breakup, as if her eyes were just skimming over those tedious riddles of years ago, which is a reference to jokes they had shared in the past when they were in love, but now do not interest her at all. And more than just an example of subliminal wordplay, the rove-love-I rhyme pair could also carry a symbolic message. Despite the two's physical union by the pond and their reminder of a shared experience, reinforced by the visual likeness of the words rove and love, they are now two different and separate individuals who harbour distinct feelings about their past. And this reality is borne out by this sudden sonic misalignment between the O in rove and the in love. Interestingly, the word rove also rhymes better with loathe, meaning hate, rather than love. The idea of roving eyes also suggests unfaithfulness, and that's presumably on the ex-lover's part. And this could possibly have been a cause of their estrangement. Now, there are lots of internal rhymes in this poem, but perhaps the one that lends itself most to this characterization of a heartbroken, victimized speaker is the thing, a wing, and rings group that come in lines 9, 12, and 14 respectively. Here, it's perhaps worth reading these three lines in juxtaposition. The smile on your mouth was the deadest thing, like an ominous bird a wing, and rings with wrong. Now, the key sentiment here hinges on the word ominous. While the bird that's about to fly off, as indicated by the word a wing, may symbolise the departure of a lover, the rhyme that couples this bird a wing reference with the deadest thing and the verb rings together serve up a more macabre image. Ring means to twist, or the act of breaking an animal's neck by twisting it with force. And so instead of a flying bird, we are here reminded of a dead one, and one that's dead because it's been killed in a violent act. What this could imply is the ex-lover's abandonment of their relationship, as a cruel twist of fate, and one that's left the speaker in an emotionally deadened state, from which he's not quite recovered despite the passing of time. The impression of a past hurt that's carried into the present is conveyed through the internal rhyme word rings, which is structurally carried over from stanza 3 to stanza 4. And this perhaps reinforces the notion of an unshakable memory that continues to haunt and grieve the speaker. Now, throughout the poem, we see other examples of internal rhymes, such as day, lay, grey, played, wrong, pond, alive, and die. Overall, this haphazard sprinkling of rhymes seems to strengthen the impression of mental echoes, as the speaker recalls that winter day when he realised that there is no hope left for any rekindling of their relationship. Specifically, the line, alive enough to have strength to die, is worth a special comment, as the internal rhyme of alive and die is made ironic by the paradoxical nature of the line itself. The speaker notes that the smile on his ex-lover's mouth, which is fake and dead, as it were, was so animated, alive enough, that it had ceased to be anything but genuine. Because, of course, to be able to contrive such a smile is also an indication that she no longer feels any love or affection for the speaker. And so her lively smile only conveys for him a dearth of emotions, and as such symbolises the death of any remaining hope he may have harboured for their relationship. Simply put, a smile that's too alive is really just a sign that true emotions have died, which is an idea that cuts against the sonic harmony of the internal rhyme. Despite the regularity of the quatrains, Hardy loosens up the tightness of his stanzas by varying his use of enjambment and caesura. It's worth noting that the final stanza echoes the first one, as the speaker's memory of a wistful, disappointing reunion comes full circle, and does so in a haunting manner. Now note that the lines in the echoing first and final stanzas are choppier than those in the sandwiched stanzas, i.e. stanzas 2 and 3, both of which look back on the incident and include lines that spill over into the next. This contrast between mid-stopped and end-stopped lines for the present moment and run-on lines for the past event perhaps emphasises the speaker's emotional brokenness as he recalls that very winter day, but also establishes a sense of sobering acceptance of reality, as the speaker trots out in the final stanza a list of objects that he associates with his memory of her face, such as the god-cursed sun, the pond, and the greyish leaves, which are now the only identifiable traces left of their bond. So there's no doubt that Neutral Tones is an intensely sad poem, and it's made doubly so by a strong sense of suppressed despair and helpless resignation, as we see the speaker bottling up his emotions within the full stanzas, as if each neatly stacked quatrain functions like a receptacle of feeling and memory. But of course, real emotions will out, and hence the sustained tension that we see between enjambed and end-stopped lines throughout the poem, as well as those glimmers of spontaneous rhymes which surface amidst the poem's overall uniformity. And that's it, everyone! If you find this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel for other GCSE and A-level English literature videos. Make sure you check out the blog post for this in the description box below, and don't forget to leave a comment so that you let me know what you're studying and what else you want to see from this channel in the future. See you soon!